Welcome to another episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today's guest is going to be Chris Watson. He is a husband and father of two, 13-year veteran of the fire service, currently serves as an engineer for the Crestview Fire Department, spent 8 years in the Navy as an aviation rescue swimmer, comes from a long family of firefighters all in the Florida area. He's also the president of the Crestview Professional Firefighters Association. I originally met Chris at the Small Town Job Town Conference, where I was a fill-in teacher, and I noticed immediately that he was a dialed-in fireman. His skill set was very, very good, and I said, I got to talk to this guy. So we exchanged numbers after the conference, and I said, hey, man, let's get together. Well, finally, while visiting the 850, he was able to come down and sit with me face-to-face and just have a good conversation about fire stuff and all the stuff that he wanted to talk about. Hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Thank you. Ready to roll?
Ready.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today we have on with us Chris Watson out of Crestview. That's his current department. We are out here in Pensacola. I was going to do a remote with him, but what ended up happening was instead of doing the remote, what I decided, he's here, so I might as well. I came out here for a vacation, and I was like, well, do you want to come by? And he said, sure, man, I'll join you on, I'll come out to the rental. So, we got him out here. The way that we ran into each other is that, I taught at Small Town Job Town, and we're teaching all these search classes, teaching all these different search drills. And I was filling in for Rob, and I had an idea of what a search should look like. And the long story short of that is, that when Chris went through the search, when you went through the search, you absolutely smoked it. What I thought a search should look like was exactly correct, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta talk to this guy." And so we had a couple little conversations on the side, and learned a little bit more about you. And I said, "Well, let's bring you on the podcast and then talk to you." So, Chris, it took us an hour and a half to get all this equipment set up and sounding decent. So I appreciate you bearing with us. But now the floor is yours. We're going to get into your background, how you got into the fire service, kind of your journey in through it, and then all of the topics that you are passionate about. So thank you for your patience, and thanks for coming out and talk to us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. So first and foremost, thanks for having me on and giving me a platform to talk to you about this stuff.
Sure.
So as you mentioned, I do work for the city of Crestview. Been there for nearly 8 years. Been in the fire service going on 13 years now. Before that, I was in the Navy. Mm-hmm. One of those things I never really thought I would ever actually become a fireman. That's not normally the origin story most people start with, but I always envisioned I'd be in the Navy. My grandfather was there, and he was like my hero, my inspiration, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so I never thought of anything past that. Joined the Navy. I was an aviation rescue swimmer, which was an awesome job. Got to jump out of helicopters, do cool stuff. But the Navy just ended up not being like my end all be all. Won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but I was previously engaged. And, when you're in the Navy, you got to kind of make some decisions. You're overseas. Do I want to come home for Christmas? Do I want to come home for, my sister's, birth of her kids, things like that. And you start to prioritize things a little differently. And I think that's what happened with me. I want to say everything, goes according to plan, whether it's your plan or not. I wouldn't have met my wife and had my two beautiful kids if I'd have stayed in. So, really happy with the way things turned out. But what initially got me in the fire service is I come from a family of firefighters. My cousins are all firemen, represented by Alachua County, Gainesville Fire, Miami-Dade. And so when I got off the phone with my detailer, when I was getting out of the Navy, my first phone call was to my cousin who teaches at the Florida State Fire Academy. And I was like, hey, man, I just got out. I don't know what I'm going to do. He's like, well, I know what you're going to do. He's like, you're going to the fire academy. I was like, oh, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And so he really walked me through, kind of held my hand through the whole process, got me into Florida State Fire College in Ocala. And it's just been 100 miles an hour since then. I would say I really, really started finding passion just going through the academy. Like, it was such an easy transition from from the military into a paramilitary organization. I like what the guys are about. working hard, sweat equity, you know, training hard and helping people. You really, at the core of it, that's really what it boiled down to for me. So from there, you know, I had to find a job. I could have stayed down there with my family, but I really wanted to get out on my own two legs. So
Right.
I remembered going through training here in Pensacola and how beautiful it is, and loved the area. Applied, got picked up with Escambia County, and that was my first home. And if anybody doesn't know about Escambia County, they go to a ton of fires. And it was really, that's where, you know, my passion really started to kind of snowball and avalanche, if you will. Got a lot of good experience, worked with some of the best firefighters in the state, and then decided to move to a smaller department. Escambia County is nearly 23 stations now, cover 800 square miles. I moved over to a small town, Crestview, 3 stations, 25 square miles. So
Yeah, smaller, considerably smaller.
much smaller. So that was it. You know, I never thought I would be in the fire service, but I can't think of myself not being in the fire service.
Awesome.
So that's where the journey really kind of started off and took me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so from there, so you had got how many years do you have on total in the fire service?
A little over 13.
A little over 13, and you're currently driving for Crestview.
That's right.
How much time with Crestview?
7.5.
7.5.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it goes back to, you know, me being at small town and then watching you do searches. And one of the things that had freaked me out was that, you know, you're teaching at different levels with this, with all the guys that you have on. When you go to these conferences, there's guys that are kind of all over the map. And I know you're not going to take compliments well, and that's perfectly fine. But we said it again and again, and it wasn't just me that noticed it. It was also some of the other students that were like, there's something going on with these Crestview boys. Because it wasn't only you, it was also you were with, who were you with? You were with a guy.
Yeah, I was with my buddy Parker.
Parker, yeah. So when y'all two went on the evolutions, it was like, whoa, like these guys are dialed in, and the other students were noticing it. Like I would get caught by other students that would come and say, "Man, what's in the water with these Crestview boys? We're giving you like these kind of basic searches, find the baby, whatever. But then you're coming out and you're making radio calls. You're like, rescue 1 to command, primary complete. I'm like, I didn't ask you to do that, which tells me that you must have had sets and reps. At least that's where my brain kind of went. So I said, man, I want to figure out, like, that wasn't the first time you did a search. So I kind of wanted to talk to you about basically, why were you so good at that? Why did you make that look so good? Because once again, it wasn't the first time you did it. So was it a training culture from previous departments or current department? Was it a passion for conferences? Was it getting outside the bubble? Explain why that wasn't the first time you did that.
Yeah, so that's like a resounding yes to all those things. Really, I was blessed to, start where I started at Escambia County. They're very aggressive, progressive, training-centric kind of guys. And then when I went to Crestview, same thing. The culture there is all about training. And so we all want to elevate each other, and you're all competitive, and we all want to work hard. And we want to, put those reps in, if you will. And, I like to say that really all the credit goes to the guys who taught me and inspired me to start going to conferences. And they did that at probably at an early age for me. Not even a year in, I was going to Orlando and MAFC, because that's where my mentors were going. Some of my mentors were teaching there. And so, right here in Pensacola, we've got HROC and COBC, and we've just got such a good training culture here in the Panhandle that it's not even one department that can take credit for that culture. It really is. It's a systemic thing here, and we're lucky to be a part of it. One of the things about our department is we don't necessarily fight as much fire as some of the bigger cities, but what we do try to do is get those reps in training. And I really think one of the key reasons why we're so passionate about training is we don't just go through the motions. Mm-hmm. We're not checking the box training. We want to do purposeful, intentful training. And, we have a saying like, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And so,
sure.
To your point of like making radio calls, we're not just going through the motions. We're not just, hitting that rep. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can. And we want to train till failure, or train till we can't get it wrong.
Let me back you up. I want to back you up to the part where you had talked about MAFC and all these different conferences. That is a huge part of my journey. Is getting out to CFT. That was a big one. When did that process start for you? If you've got all these years on, was this like almost ingrained? Like you came on 13 some odd years ago, you're out at conferences in year 1 and 2, that you've been a veteran conference goer for the last umpteen years, or was it kind of a recent thing?
No, so that's the thing is that, like, I guess again back to the being blessed part is that I just assumed that's what you did. Like, you were a fireman and you go to conferences. Like, when you got time, obviously you want to have that good work family balance. But like,
Sure.
when you got time, like, you go to conferences, you hone your skills, you get around other like-minded guys who are passionate about the job, where you're encouraged to try new things, where you're not going to get ostracized or ridiculed because you have an idea. And it just recharges the batteries and rejuvenates you. And so, you know, starting that from such an early time in my career, it was just seamless to keep doing it. And when I started getting some credibility or some seniority, I just felt like, well, hey, like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take new guys to these things. You're supposed to broaden their horizons. You're supposed to, get them out here into the fraternal, also fun part of the job too. And so, I guess that's just part of who I am. And, it doesn't seem like, hey, I need to stop going to these things. There's times when I take classes where, I've heard it before. I've heard the message, but even if I pick up one small thing, that's new to me, or that's like I can relearn, then the whole conference is worthwhile to me.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, man, you said something that was so important. We don't have within our department a big culture of going to conferences. It's just not a thing. And you have a whole different. You're telling me you got like a whole different world where over here in this area, it's like it's just what you do. You go and grab new knowledge and like, and so you didn't get. So when you come back and you give something, I say you come back and you give something, y'all probably started with things like, the walk the wall or the tripod or, getting your hands into the center of the room versus up on window seals, because you're looking at what the most, what the, I don't want to say the latest and the greatest, but like, what is the best way to perform whatever it is? It could be search or ladders. So it's nice that for you, it was just what you grew up in and where you started.
Yeah, and I
And
think also it helps us avoid, like, kind of finding those niche topics too, or those niche tactics. Like, it's all recycled stuff. As well as I do.
oh
Like,
yes.
we're all taking the same stuff that we've been taught and regurgitating it. But like, by inundating ourselves with so many different conferences, we're able to kind of cherry pick, fine tune, meld them all together, find exactly what works for my department now that wouldn't work from, say, my old department. Just manpower differences, tactics and tools, all those things. And so that's another reason why I continuously go to all these things, because like, if I'm going to MAPC and maybe some guys from Atlanta are teaching their tactics, that's great. Like, and then they're cutting edge. But maybe I go to small town, job town, I'm like, man, this is how small town guys are doing it, with limited manpower, with in these suburban or smaller environments. Like, we're tweaking all that, we're taking it all in, and everybody's always got at least a couple of awesome things to show us.
Um, I want to stick on that topic for a minute. We got a lot to talk about, but I wanted to stick on something that you had told me that I didn't even think was a thing. And I had told you, because I had to fill in. I told you that all the stuff that I had was recycled. All the stuff it's plagiarized, repackaged, and then sent back out. Which is, I got it from Cobb County, right there next to Atlanta, and through Dustin Martinez. So I repackaged what he repackaged, and then I repackaged. And I told you right at the beginning, I said, hey, if you're a conference goer, I told you right at the beginning, if you're a conference goer, if you're a guy that's kind of out there, then I'm probably not going to give you a whole lot that's new. And I did the whole program. You came up and talked to me, and you said, hey man, do you teach other places? I was like, no, you're seeing the second time I've ever taught as a fill-in guy. And you said, well, maybe we could potentially have you come out. And I thought you were some small, like you'd be down the road at some Louisiana department. I'm like, man, where are y'all at? And I remember you said Crestview, and I was like, Florida? Like, why would you want me to come out to Florida? I was like, dude, you got all these killers right in your backyard. And here's what struck me. It's you like, we might be, and here's what wanted you to talk about was like sometimes the guys get oversaturated with the killers, the guys that I look up to that are going to be here shortly. That you're like, well, why would you bring me in and versus the all of the great guys that flow through, say a Pensacola or whoever, and you said they've heard all those guys already and they've heard them multiple times. Sometimes they just need it from a new perspective. I'd never even considered that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we're blessed around here. We've got, Chief Isaacson, the Stone Brothers, Joel Richardson, tons of like really big names and influential guys here that are just top-notch instructors. And, they teach it better than almost anybody.
Sure.
But one of the things is that sometimes, those names, like people hear it and they're just like, oh, well, we've heard him talk and yeah, like that's because of their department or their situation. And so sometimes they're blocking out the message just because of the sender. And it's unfortunate too, because of the people they're blocking out. It's like, man, you could learn so much from this person. But hearing it from another person, that, hey, this does work over here. It works over here. Like it's not just his message, it's the message. We don't have just one way of doing things, but like some of these guys are, they're so tuned in and dialed in, man. It's to hear that message from someone else. They need to hear it, and if we can just have someone else or someone different fine tune that frequency and it reaches some more people, then that's a win.
Yeah. Now that you say it, and there's guys that won't listen to me, right? Because I say it. And even though I'm saying the exact same thing as another guy who's maybe kind of in lockstep with me, they like that guy.
Yeah.
And they'll listen to that. We're saying the exact same thing, but once again, it's if it's the person delivering it, and they don't like it, then it's just never going to get through. So I should have known that makes sense.
And I think a step further too is, I don't know that it's like whether you like him or not, but whether it's local politics of like station, department versus department, or this guy's about that, or what the perceived perception of that person is, that has a lot to do with it too. You come in and we'll say here in Florida, you're from Louisiana, they don't know a ton about you, and they're like, you got a clean slate. Like they know nothing about you except for you're saying this message, and they're like, man, that's great,
Yep.
Whereas if it's someone else, a bigger name, they're like, I heard this one thing from this guy one time. I didn't agree with it, so I'm just writing off everything else.
There's baggage, so to speak, that kind of comes along with it. No, that's good stuff. Crestview, I wanted to ask you, they're sending you all over the place. Do they have a pretty good track record of kind of just sending guys wherever they kind of want to go for the most part? Like you can go to more than one place, because like our spot is you get to go to one class, assuming the budget's there, but like you get one place usually that you can hop out to. But you got other departments around me like Slidell, where if they'll as long as there's money in the budget, they'll blast you out multiple times all over the place. And I'm kind of wondering, Crestview's been pretty good about sending you multiple places.
Oh, Crestview's been great about that. So each person has $600 in their personal training budget to use as they please, whether it's a class that they don't need for promotion, or if it's a conference they want to go to, smoke divers, anything they want to use that money for, they can, as long as they can show that it has a benefit to the department. Again, we're really tight with a lot of departments in the Panhandle, and so if someone's offering something close by, a lot of times they just let us slide in, and we do the same thing for them. So that allows you
that allows you to make it to a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Yeah. $600 in a budget doesn't seem like a ton, because when you talk about travel and you talk about the conference pass itself, food, the hotel is usually the thing that's going to eat you up. So it doesn't seem like it's too high.
No,
but
it doesn't.
They'll send you places.
But yeah, so really the money only pertains to the cost of the class for us. They will give us education leave, but transportation sometimes provided reasonably. They'll give us a department vehicle. We've taken department vehicles to Andy Frederick's Day. So depending on how many people we got, hotels are on our own, and all of those things, in my opinion, also speak volumes to the guys that are still willing to put that money out and do those things. Not that it's super tied into training, but our training budget doesn't have to be used for classes that are needed for promotion. Everything that's needed for promotion is paid for by the department. So if you need a class and it's required for promotion, they pay for it.
Nice.
So that $600 ends up going a little farther than you think.
Sure. Hopping slightly off of conferences, I had jokingly told you, I was like, when you were sliding around the building, just like a legend. I said, man, why don't you should be teaching this thing, not me. And I said, and you said I kind of do teach, and that's kind of what I wanted to dip into right here. Was we didn't get a chance to talk about it. I wanted to pick your brain more on it, but you said you had messed with I'm gonna screw it up, frog rid operations in
Yeah.
Florida, and so. I know that not only that I wanted you to elaborate on, but also we'll move from the teaching side into the fact that you also are involved in recruit training, which I'm assuming is we'll get into it, a volunteer, you offer yourself to go in there and it's not a forced thing. So let's go the whatever you call it, frog.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's our frog team. It's the Florida RID Operations Group.
Okay.
And it's a bunch of firefighters, both active and retired, that comprise this team. And we teach RIT, firefighter survival, and we host a RIT competition all over the country. So actually here in about a week and a half or 2 weeks, we're headed down to Palm Beach State for the invitational down there. We're having a RIT competition. We teach one every year in Orlando at the Florida Fire Chiefs Association. And then we just got back from Reno a couple months back. So it's really kind of taken off. It's a conglomerate of all guys from all throughout the Panhandle. I'm sorry, the state of Florida, not just the Panhandle.
Florida, sure.
But yeah, so I started with them probably 4 years ago. Like I said, our heart right now, the meat and potatoes of it is we do the RIT competition. But we also, one of the great things about our competition is it's not just like, and I'm not talking on any of the competitions, but a lot of the competitions are just driven by just physical fitness. How fast can you do this? Our competitions are driven by firemanship. So we don't want you just to, fly through the course, with no regard for anything. Like they're centric around an LODD. So we have a standard course we set up. We have two teams competing. They've got to get victims through diminishing clearances, through confined space, packaging them. You've got to breach a window or take a door, all kinds of things. And so we focus and grade based off of how well you perform those skills, not just how fast you do it. And like I said, we have a standard course, top people go to the finals, and it's a surprise LODD that we use, and we reset the course to mimic and model after an LODD so that we all learn like what happened, what went wrong, how do we not have that happen again.
Now, let me ask you, because it's Florida and because it's RIT, you got two of the biggest names in RIT in Rob and in Basil. And I'm wondering, are they part of this thing also? Like how many, like are they part of it, and how big is this frog team? How big are we talking?
So right now we've probably got about a dozen guys total on the team, because it takes a lot of support staff to do this. So, we've got like guys that are judges. We've got guys that build the course. We've got, the core guys that before I started, it was probably 4 to 6 guys that it was really their brainchild, and they got it off the ground and got it running, and it's picked up steam. And because of how big it's become, it takes a lot of people to run this thing.
Sure.
Basil's not necessarily like part of our team, but he's definitely been around. He's given his insight. He's even attended. So yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge right there. But it's not that it's a closed group thing or anything like that. But it's one of those like invitation kind of things. You get brought in by guys on the team, and it's not that it's exclusive or anything like that. It's just we see guys, and we tend to honestly pick a lot of our cadre from people who attend. You see them, you see their interest, and then they want to know how they can be a part of it. Sure, keep coming around. Like let's see what you're about and see what the guys think of you, and
skill set, the whole nine.
Yep, because we also will have some hands-on training, like the day up to the course, where it's just we'll pick a few firefighter survival skills, whether it's getting a victim out of a window onto a ladder, or packaging, firefighter CPR, those kinds of things, and we'll really hone in on that the day before.
I want to talk about RIT real quick with we did a quick drill for just hooking up a UAC at the station. Blind yourself, put gloves on, hook up a UAC. And I had no frame of reference for how to make that happen. So I went first. There were 10 of us in the living room and the station making this. And so when I went first, man, it was a struggle. And then I took Rob's class, and somebody in his cadre was like, okay, it was Maddie the goon, right? So he said, look, you're trying to find the cage, you go down the cage and it's right in the center of the cage. Well, once I had like, because it's so simple, right? But it had never been framed that way. And once he did, it was like, oh, this is like, it's really not that difficult. It was way harder than it was way easier than I was making it. But I was just, that's when you talk about RIT operations, I'm like, sometimes you just need like a little nugget and you're able to,
The light bulb goes
the
off.
light bulbs goes, and that was one of them. But I don't want to derail on that. All right, so that's Florida RIT operations. So you do some teaching on that side, but also I know that you're involved with helping teach the recruits. How do you operate that, and what kind of stuff do you teach, and what are you interested in? How does that work?
Yeah, so both I teach at the local fire academy here in Pensacola. That's Georgetown. So all potential candidates for all the departments around here.
You have to go to a state academy, right?
Yeah.
To Florida. You can't like lateral in. It's like
So we do have, if you have certain states, they'll have, you can come here in Florida and challenge.
Okay. There's like some reciprocity style. Yeah. Anyway, okay. But for the most part, you're going through a state academy.
Yeah. So I teach at the state academy here. We have 3 in the Panhandle, Northwest Chipola, Georgetown. And then I also am one of the FTOs at our department. So I train the new recruits once they get on. We have a 2-week process with them, and we cover basically how does Crestview do X, Y, and Z. And so we cover that. We have some pass-fail things, so the guys don't meet that criteria in their first week or 2, we turn them loose.
Okay.
And it's really just like, hey, are you going to fit in? Can you meet this minimum competency level? And so.
Is that something that you volunteered to do for did you get voluntold to go like teach rookies, the recruits that you have coming in?
So it was one of those things where I kind of asked to be a part of it because I was informally already involved because, I'm one of those guys when I like see the guys training, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, like, what are you guys working on? Can I add something real quick? And at some point I just basically just became a part of it through that. But I feel very vested. That's honestly the reason I teach at the academy. I want to get that first look and that first insight on potentially the guys applying for our department. I'm getting a good insight and a glean who these guys are, what their work ethic is, what their mindset is, and are they going to fit in? Will they fit the culture? And so fast forward when they get on the job, I just want to keep that steam going. Like I want to have someone set the bar high right off the bat. I don't want them to think that they can ramp up through their career. It's not how it goes, in my opinion. You want to start as high as you can, and inevitably you're going to fall a little bit through your career. But hopefully, if you start high enough, you're still ending out pretty solid. But I don't feel like people just gradually. There are exceptions, but you don't just go like, yeah, I'm getting stronger and stronger and better and more motivated. Sometimes you have that bug that bites you, and you're like, okay, but. That's really how I got involved with that. It's just it's a labor of love, like I can't help but be involved, so I might as well be a part of the process.
Yeah, no doubt. I've said that a few times on this podcast, is that it's a joy to be able to give what I can give, which ain't very much, but I can give what I can give as soon as I can give it. To have them, it's always the analogy I make, is to have them start as high as possible, right? You just kind of mentioned that. Like it took me a long time to get to where I'm at. Once again, not very good, but to get where I was at. And like, man, if you can get a guy that just comes straight out the rookie academy and you just give him everything, he's like, okay, now in year 1, you should be like, you've got so much more than I had to start with. And now how much better could you be? Like I'm not starting at the top and then you're going to fall off. It's like, I'm trying to get you up here. And then boom, now you can learn more and more. You're going to be way better than me by the time you're at year 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like it's almost exciting to be able to try to push that process forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like the whole steel sharpens steel thing,
Yes.
and it's like, you bring these new guys in and they're already coming out of academies way smarter than we did. And then they've got that passion, that motivation. You fuel that fire. Like you said, you dump everything you got into them. Next thing you know, like you're trying to keep up. And so you got to constantly better yourself. And it's just that whole, back and forth thing.
So from there, I wanted to, so you have so many different things here. Sharing what you learned. Did you want to like both good and bad, or staying fit for the job? Where did you kind of want to Where did you want to kind of bounce to?
Yeah, the staying fit for the job thing. And that really for me was kind of like my aha moment, really, when I in the fire service.
Okay, yeah, because you had that also as
Yeah.
okay, but they tie together.
They do. They
Okay.
really do. So my aha moment really started when I started teaching. You
Okay.
know, I came out of the Navy and I was a, rescue swimmer. I was a stud, and then just throughout the years, kind of just started packing on some pounds. And life gets to you. You get married, and the excuses pile up, right? And so do the pounds. Well, I had the time, and I wanted to share my experience and knowledge at the fire academy, and I remember like being out there on the drill field, and like yelling at these guys, hey, pick it up, pick up the pace, hustle, better push-ups. And then thinking to myself, can I hold this standard?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And it was a gut check, because I was like, what kind of person am I if I say, hey, to get into the fire service, you got to be here, but to stay in the fire service, you can be way down here. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So that was that at that moment, I was like, I need to be able to do what they can do, and I need to make it look easier. So I really got back into running, and like fitness became more and more part of the job. And we always say it is, but like I didn't want to just talk about it. I wanted to walk the line. I wanted to toe the line, if you will. And so I wanted to be able to show these guys, like, hey, anything you do or I ask you to do, I'm going to do right with you. And so I started, like, every time we'd PT, I PT with them. If we're doing a ladder tour, I'm wearing the same stuff you are. I've got a ladder as well. And I really want to lead by that example. I want people to, take pride when they put the uniform on, and it kind of sucks if, you got a guy like, man, he's got so much experience, and you're like, but he doesn't look like a fireman, like,
Yeah.
and whether you like it or not, looking like a fireman matters.
Very much so. It's not too difficult. Like, ask the public, line up a guy that's, 350 pounds on the job, gut way over. And then, line up a guy that maybe looks more like you and say, okay, like, who do you want going to get your kid? You don't know anything else. You know who they're picking. And that's the realities. That's just the reality of physical fitness. That's the reality of VO2 max and strength, anaerobic lactic acid ability. It's just the reality of the job. When you started slipping, how long did you slip before you were like, all right, let's pull it back? I talk about my fitness journey in depth in a whole separate YouTube video that's on my personal account. So I slipped for a good while, but
yeah. So
let me ask you this: how long have you been on from the aha moment to now? How long do you have staying fit?
I'd say about 4 years now.
Okay,
like 4 years of like really, really putting an emphasis on it.
So about 21-ish ballpark, ish.
Yeah. Well,
pre-COVID. I mean, COVID, a little after COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say the thing is that, like, I think it was so easy to slip is because, I wasn't weak, and I wasn't like a little guy by any means. I was still lifting and stuff like that. And I thought that, like, oh, I'm still strong. I'm big. Like, I can still do this job. And to an extent I could, but it was, really, like you said, it's that second bottle when you're going in and you're smoked, and you're trying to pull someone out, or that's what it was. Is like, I had the strength. I just didn't have any cardio to back it with. And so I was like, man, I got to really balance this all out. My knees were hurting all the time. My back would hurt, like, again, it's like I could do it, but like recovery was just getting way and way worse.
You said that, let's talk about running, because that's obviously, I just, for whatever reason, that's how I started when I realized I was not healthy. That running was the easy thing. Lace up shoes, go run. And I definitely was like, oh, I fell in love with it. No, I hate it. Running is miserable all the time, but that's what I keep going back to maintain my fitness. But you have a similar, it seems like you said you had a love for running also. So what, how did that happen?
Yeah, so
because you're obviously a bigger dude than I'm a Photoshop this to where I look bigger than you. I'm gonna shrink you down.
Yeah,
but you're obviously a bigger dude, so you can't only be running. So what happened there?
Right. So I really started splitting it up. I think what got me on the track was I was like, I need to be able to run more. And so, like, the best way to train or to get into something is to train for something.
Do the thing that you want to be good at.
Have a goal. And so I was like, I'm signing up for, we have a double bridge run here. It's a little over a 9-mile race. I was like, I'll start with that. I'm going to train for it. And it like you said, it sucks in the beginning, but then, like,
dude, it sucks.
The results that you see where you're like, man, like last week's, couple miles, like, sucked. Like, this week's couple miles weren't so bad. And then, like, well, this is getting easier. I'm getting faster. You start to see the body transformation. And I realized then I had to also, incorporate the weights. And so I kind of do a split now, just like like 1 day lift, 1 day run, 1 day lift, 1 day run.
Purely out of my own curiosity, what do your runs look like as far as not like speed, but like, do you have a time? Do you have a distance? Are you just out there like, I'm going to move at whatever pace that I feel like it for?
So I really, I honestly, I still go back to training for a race. Like I find something to train for, and I'll usually develop a plan for that. If I'm not training for something like that, I try to do a 3, 4, 5. So like a 3 miler, 4 miler, and a 5 miler throughout the week.
Okay, throughout the week, because on what your middle days is a lift day.
So like like I'll start like if Monday was a run, then Tuesday's a lift.
Got it.
And so
Back
that's
and
how I do
forth.
it. Yep, and then I take Sunday off.
Okay.
Unless I'm at work.
Yeah. That's a solid way to do that. And I completely agree with you. Once again, not my podcast, but I do enjoy talking about fitness I agree with you that when there's something on the schedule, that definitely pushes me further. I've trained for 2 marathons and a half marathon. And it used to be like 4 miles, 4 miles, 4. It was just like I would run 4 miles. That was the run. I wasn't gonna ever do it. And then when I started training for marathon, what happened? Now like you have to start pushing 5. And then for a while, my minimum was a 6.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum was a 6, and then you had to then you got to sprinkle in the 8s and the 10s and the 12s. You just start bulk mileaging, whatever you want to call it. But you're right. If you don't put something on the schedule, then those 3s and 4s just kind of keep rolling. So I would agree with you, and I would encourage other people, stick something on the schedule. For me, it's One Bad Tour. I signed up for Baz's course.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to get in October, did not get in. I tried to get in last year, also didn't get in. But the point is, like, I'm going to train as if I were going in October, but that forces me to put the gear on, go
Creates
flip the
accountability.
tire. It creates some accountability just to say, pretend like you're going to be there. Okay, well, what kind of shape do you need to be in? You need to be in unbelievable shape. So train as if you're going to show up. And that yes, it's the accountability. So yeah, I completely agree with you on get something on the schedule. All right, what else did you want to jump into right here? President of the local. You want to touch on that?
Yeah. So I've been involved with our union since a little after I started with Crestview. I had experience at our last department as the VP there. I recently became the president with the past year. And it's a lot, man. It's, like it's so much. And it's like when you go from like the back seat to the front seat, you got all these ideas and grandiose plans of like, oh, why don't we just do that? And until you're the guy driving, and you're like, okay, well, how do I push this agenda, so to speak? How do I convince the fire chief of this? How do I convince the city of this? How do I convince the membership of this? Because you're really wearing so many hats when you take on this role. Like, like obviously I have what I think works best for me, but that doesn't necessarily reflect what's going to work best for the whole department. What's going to work best for the union? What's going to work best for the people we serve? Like there's a lot that goes into that, and it gets really tough to balance. I will say my saving grace is I've got a good e-board, that they're completely different from me, which is exactly what I hoped for. Like I didn't want someone who was exactly my mindset, my speed, my drive. I wanted the exact opposite, because like I need someone that's like, hey man, different approach here, different tactic. Let's turn things around. Okay, let me think about that. Let me look at that. And then the other thing is, we've got an awesome fire chief. Like he's the epitome of a fireman's fire chief.
And he's new to the position. He just came in a month or 2 ago, something like that.
Yep. He's been in just a few months now. Absolutely leads by example, and, one of the best things is that whenever we go to negotiations, I'm not like negotiating with him and the city. Like we have done our homework together, and we're kind of presenting a unified front with the city now. And I guess while we're talking about, like, another good thing is things are good with us. Like we don't have a real adversarial situation with our city. So I know there's going to be bad times. There always is. There's going to be differences of opinion. But like really and truly, the only thing that's, I guess, served me is just I try to do the right thing you know, as much as I can for the most amount of people. And, you know, the city sees that, the fire chief sees that. So even when we have different opinions, like they see where I'm coming from, where the membership's coming from. And so like we've been able to really work through some kind of tough spots and some not so fun discussions, but we're all really kind of geared towards the same outcome.
Right. Do you feel at times, like instead of you pushing it as a president, that really you're just a voice for the body, or is it kind of a give and take? Because like I heard you say like things that I want to push and things that I'm trying to do, but you know a lot of times in that president position, it's really you're just again a voice for the body. What does the body want to do, and then you're voicing what they're because that's kind of the whole point. That's the whole point of a union, right?
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming because, you know, sometimes you become privy to things that the membership doesn't have full, you know, access to. And so, you know, really kind of the more behind the scenes things. And also when you're up there in that position, you know, you really have to take that 1,000-yard view of what are we trying to accomplish and what are the impacts of that. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes the guys, they see things face value or just arm's length. And they're like, this is going to help us. And I'm like, yeah, but think about how that's going to impact everybody else after. You know, I know you're going to be able to maybe get this promotion right now, but yes, like think about all the other people that it'll impact. And so like it is difficult sometimes when I'm like, yeah, I know, I hear you guys. Like I do, like, trust me, I'm your representative, but like, you're not thinking this all the way through.
We had a situation where we had an issue go down. This was years ago. We had an issue go down. And there was like a bunch of people that showed up to the union meeting because they were up in arms about this particular issue. And we all voted that we were going to do this thing. And the union president was like, okay, I'll do that thing because that's what the body voted for. And then after we voted, somebody had come, you know, with their wisdom and said, hey, by the way, if you do that thing, here's what the fallout's going to be. And here's why. And he gave us all the back room stuff. He said, so y'all can continue on that path. I'm just letting you know. This is the fallout. We re-voted. We put up another vote and then did the opposite of what we had all voted on because we got to your point, we got the backroom view of, hey, here's what the consequence of that action might end up being. And the consequence was pretty bad. So to your point, yeah, you once you see behind the curtain, you can at least hopefully help guide the body on, here's the face value. I know you guys are maybe mad or upset or whatever the issue is, but here's why we're doing what we're doing, or here's maybe why this might be a better path. So.
I try to remind the guys too. I'm like, yo, it's easy to talk tough when you're not sitting across from the fire chief. You know, it's real easy, you know, to say like, this is what I would do. This is what I would say, until you're looking across from the city manager and they're like, you want to do what? You know, this is going to cost us how much? And why do you want to do that? And I'm like,
yeah,
boy, like this is definitely gonna, stifle my promotions in the future.
Right. If you got 2 guys on a truck, we want 5 guys on every truck. It's like, okay, it sounds good, but selling it, and finding the money.
Give me the tools to present this instead of just saying, this is what we want, make it happen. And I'm like, I mean, I'm just like you, man. Like I'm a fireman. I'm way underqualified to do this job.
Sure. Okay, so staying fit for the job, obviously super important. You got several things. Ensuring the older guys to remember why they signed up. I don't know if you want to dabble in that.
Sure. Yeah, we definitely talk about that. So, it's a natural progression of things, but guys become disenfranchised with the job, and like the older guys, and it's not just all the older guys, but some of the older guys, they've been doing it so long and they're so reluctant to train or to try something new because it's almost like they have this mentality that if they are willing to change on any of their views or any of their tactics, that it's almost like they're admitting they were doing something wrong. And it's not that, Chief Jenny Craner of Pensacola Fire said one of the things that's always stuck with me, it's resounding. To be a good fireman, you have to learn, unlearn, and relearn, because the fire service is always evolving, and it's like, hey, we're not trying to tell you that you were doing it wrong. You did the best with what you had at the time, but like, there's a chance that things are different now, and the tactics do need to change a little bit. we've got new equipment, we've got new materials, whether it's in the building construction or just the equipment we're using, like we've got different opportunities. Let's utilize them.
Sure.
And so that's the hard part sometimes. There's like, well, what makes you right? What makes us wrong? It's like, no one's right, no one's wrong. Like, let's just try these things and see if we can all become cohesive and really gel on this. And then go ahead.
Even more to your point, because I've run it. Look, this is nothing in firefighting is new. We've all run into the same problem. But that was going back to like my not my aha moment, but to that point of like learning and then unlearning and then relearning. It's part of my story was going through. We only ever learned from IFSTA back in I came on in 06. Yeah, 06. The IFSTA book was the crawling around on the ground, the centipede search, hand on the boot. And if you've never learned anything else, especially like you said, with the older guys, they instead of hearing like, oh, there might be a better way, they hear you were doing it wrong this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're a bad fireman because you were doing it wrong. That's what they hear, but that's not what we say.
Exactly.
So like the messaging to try to shift that to like, hey, I'm just showing you something that I learned somewhere else from somebody else that I think works better. Like, can we at least attempt to transition to what is basically a new standard? And I keep talking about search because that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I enjoy. But it goes that way for anything like ladders. When you talk about, what is the proper angle to put up a ladder? 75.5 degrees for everything, for rescue, for just climb. Yeah, that's okay. But there's like, what about the rescue angle? And we got to slide. Okay, well, let's kick that thing down about 60. Is that in the book? No, but it's going to make your job, and it's going to make the victim a lot better with the weight, So it's like when they hear those new things, whether it's RIT operations or search or ladders, you pick it flowing, like, going from an automatic nozzle to a smooth bore. They hear you were doing it wrong previously and you're bad. It's like, no. And selling that is difficult.
Yeah. And I think we have to just put our egos down for a second, which is hard, because we all like to think that we're good at the job, but being good at the job doesn't mean we can't also be better. Yeah, and changing, it's just like anything else. If one tactic isn't working, sometimes you got to change tactics.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the older guys, that's a challenge. With some of the newer guys, what I find it can be difficult is, some of the guys, they get kind of, starstruck or awestruck with what we're doing, right? We're riding on fire trucks, we're doing cool stuff, having fun, pranks, things like that. And that's great. But we really got to get guys remembering why you're here. Like, we're here for them, we're here to save lives, protect property. And as generic and played out as it is, it's the truth.
It is.
That's why we're here. And, training and that sweat equity has got to come before the recliner. It's got to come before playing video games. It's got to come before the nap, like we all get, run into the ground some shifts, but like, hey, you're like, just because you had a bad night doesn't mean you don't work out, you don't train the next day.
Let me ask you, for you personally, I didn't mean to cut off your thought, but like training daily, is that a pretty set standard for you within your, is that a you thing? Is that a crew thing? Is that like, is it personal? Is it training on duty, physical fitness on shift? How do y'all how do you operate?
So it is a department mandate that we train and work out at least an hour a day. I had some guys before that their rule of thumb was you train for at least the amount of time you spend eating in a day. If you think about it, like, you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're like, why wouldn't you train for at least that long? And that could include physical fitness. And it doesn't mean, more to your point, yes, we train every single day. And that's not a me thing, that's a we thing. And I think there are times when, some of us don't want to, but like we've got enough guys that are, into that mindset that when, even when some of like the senior guys are like, guys, like, let's just take it easy. The guys are like, hey, Cap, hey, Lou, like, what are we training on today? You're like, all right, this is what we're training on today. So they're prompting, the junior guys and the senior guys. It's everybody kind of taking care of each other. But I think sometimes people get so afraid of training because they think like, oh, I got to go out and sweat. I got to reload hose. Honestly, you're going to have bad days. On those days, tabletop, like watch some videos, pull up on the big screen, like let's look at some forcible entry. Let's look at some search. Let's look at some what if scenarios. Let's watch some houses burn down. What would we have done different? Like I saw another department, to sidetrack real quick. They keep a loop of pictures of all their calls going on in their station, and it's got like pictures from all their calls, not like the little hero poses. I'm talking like first arriving, like, those kinds of things, what they had. And they revisit those while they're sitting at the dinner table, like, oh, you remember that call? Yeah, we could have done this a little bit better. We should have done this a little bit better. So I feel like that counts as training. It shouldn't be your primary. But like if you're having a tough go of it, if it's super hot out, whatever,
Yeah.
that still counts, man. You're still getting those reps in, even if it's just mental reps.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I love that. And look, from as a guy that was not training daily to a guy that started training daily, I hear it all the time. You get a lot of there's a lot of criticism. It depends on who's talking, but I've heard criticism in the past, like YouTube videos and it's like well, if you're going from zero, like then that's a pretty good start. That to get you down the process, so that it doesn't have to be physical every day. For us, correct, critiquing a call. If we just had a big fire, the next time we come back, sitting down and talking about it and not just the pats on the back. We stopped calling it critiques on our department because the critique sounded negative. So it's called I don't know, debrief
After action.
after action, whatever it was. But I actually like hey, we screwed up. We didn't do it correctly, because there's always, in my opinion, you never do everything perfect. There's got to be something you could have done a little faster. There's got to be some decision you could make that was a little bit better. So that will be the training. Let's sit around and everybody say what you did good. We want good, but we also want the bad, so that if you find yourself in that position on the next time, the idea is that you would be like, hey, wait, I remember that. Well, I remember something about this conversation where this went really poor. I'm fixing to do the thing that went really poorly for the other guy. Maybe I shouldn't do that. So yeah, it doesn't have to be, in my opinion, doesn't have to be physical every single day.
That's a good point. Yeah. Constantly raising the bar, like, the measure of success has got to continue to improve. The measure of success isn't like, hey, we all went home. It's like, no, like, did we stretch perfectly? Did we search perfectly? Was our size up perfect? Was our placement perfect? Like, we're never going to hit that. There's always going to be, but we're going to strive for that. And we can't be afraid to call out our flaws. And I will say that our crew is pretty good about that, not hiding from something. And even if it's something like, hey, what happened? You're normally pretty good at that. I know, like, I messed up. I wasn't thinking this, or I didn't think of that. And it's like, all right, so it's lighthearted, but like, it's like, hey, I know, and it's like, all right. So
Yeah,
we're constantly raising the bar. And it's not just like, oh, hey, we put the fire out. It's like, what could we have done better? Could we have saved more? Could we have, done it a little faster?
I've heard the fire went out, everybody went home about 1 billion times. And I hear it from one, and I've told them this. I have like 2 mentors, and the one guy, there's one of them that says it in those after actions of at the end of it. Hey guys, fire went out, everybody went home. And I've told him, I was like, look, it's like, Chief, I love you. I really do. You're just one of the best guys. I said, but I was like, man, the fire went out, everybody went home. I was like, if we don't leave the couch, that fire is going to go out, and we're going to go home because we never left. Like, that shouldn't be the standard for, at the end of the critique, that shouldn't be the standard of fire went out, everybody went home, so we did a good job. Yeah. We can do a good job, but like, what can we do to improve on it once again, it's not to just beat people up. You sucked at this, you sucked at that. But we do want to figure out, where can we buy back that time for the citizen? Where can we be better so that we don't miss a search, or so that we we can get there a little, we can get the search done a little faster, stretch the line a little, make that pull a little bit better, so we're not have to readjust and pull all this excess hose on the line. So I wanted to, that shouldn't, I've heard it before, and not your emergency, hey, it's not our emergency. We're just there to make it better. It's like, I had that mindset coming up, and I don't have it anymore. It is our emergency. They pay us for it to be
To make it
our
our problem.
emergency. Yeah, it's us. There's no other fire department that they're calling. So anyway, I want to support that.
Yeah, to your point though, I really like what you said too, and that's something we really got to focus on as well, is also pointing out the good. You know, if we're just constantly pointing out the bad, like you said, these criticisms or after actions, they're just like, oh, here we go. Like, no, like you got to be like, yo, like you crushed the stretch. You know, like next time, like we're gonna do a little bit better placement, so you ain't got to, you know, be such a savant with that stretch. Like it'll be a little more natural. But excellent job on this. Let's improve on that. You know, like leave things on a good note. But you know, obviously recognize the good, but then don't be afraid to ruin the mood, if you will, and point out the bad.
Yeah, because once again, the whole goal is very simple. It's just to get better. That's it, just to get better, and we should be striving for that constantly. All right, so on to the next topic. You have on here, and I see the tattoo, small small SOML. What is that? Help me out there, man.
So SOML is the rescue swimmer motto, and it stands for "So Others May Live."
Oh,
and you know, it was impactful when I was a rescue swimmer. You know, like why we jump and why we swim hard and why we do what we do. But really, it carried over, and I want to say even became more impactful for me as a fireman. You know, why to keep training, why to stay fit, you know, why to learn these new tactics, all the things that I talked about that, you know, have helped mold who I am. It's all SOML for me, you know? So, you know, I have it on my suspenders. I have my kids' initials on my suspenders, you know, so I take that with me every call I go on. And it's really just it's always been like a creed or ethos, if you will, but it was something that I was super passionate about. And actually one of the guys I mentored, we both got the same tattoo at at the same time. So it has a little more meaning even there too. But yeah, SOML, man.
I should have known that because I'm a volunteer diver for our sheriff's department, right? And the SAR team motto is "So that others may live." But I never put the those two things never made the connection.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you. This is all I know. A former Coast Guard swimmer, rescue swimmer, and so you're a Navy rescue swimmer. Is there like a feud between, like, which one's more badass? Like, ours is harder. It's like, well, we have a movie made after ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? It's curious. It's just me being curious.
Coast Guard rescue swimmers go through like probably a little more intense and a longer course than we do.
Okay.
The I would say the biggest difference between us as a Navy SAR guys and Coast Guard is that that's their primary job. That's their only job, really. Like, you know, they go up, they go down, they're in the back. But for the Navy, because Coast Guard handles almost all the SAR for all the continental United States.
Mm-hmm.
So really, Navy SAR really does, like, if we're Coast Guard's out of pocket, or if there's jets in the air, or if you're overseas, like in Guam where I was, we were the primary SAR there. But the biggest difference between us is we don't just do search and rescue. So we're air crewmen. So we do like insertion extraction with the SEALs. We do, you know, we take, you know, the EOD guys around. We take snipers, you know, all kinds of things. So it's called like NSW. And so we do all those kinds of missions in addition to SAR. So
yeah, so
ours is a little more
different.
multifaceted, but they actually, I mean, Coast Guard swimmers are studs too.
Yeah, studs also. You hear that, Jack Spinney? You got a little plug. He said you're also a stud. Yeah, that's the one. That's the
studs.
one. That's the one guy that I know. He's a paramedic. He's a paramedic now. But anyway, okay. Do you want to dive into any impactful calls or anything that sticks out to you that you think mattered?
Trying to think of a call that necessarily mattered, as like really stuck out.
Something that you want to share.
But I would say probably the scariest call I ever went on in my life. I was working for Escambia County, and it was when we had like 27 inches of rain, like the whole town was flooded. And we spent the entire day going like around, helping people out of their houses, wading around in chest deep water, getting people out of their homes. I mean, literally from like sun up to sundown, we were doing that. And it sticks out. I remember it was like 9:00, 9:30 at night. We'd just like gotten some food, took showers, and then you hear this like boom. And we're like, what is that? Next thing you know, tones drop. There was an explosion at the jail. And I was a backseat fireman at the time, and I had a part-time backseat fireman with me who is a chief now, Chief Stone. So he was a backseat fireman with me there.
Chief Shannon Stone.
DJ
Stone. Okay,
DJ Stone.
DJ was backstepping with you at Escambia.
Yep, both of the Stone brothers worked part-time for Escambia County while they were also working at Fort Walton.
They were part-time. Okay.
So like first of all, I'm in the back with like already a legend. Like both of these guys are incredible, humblest guys you could meet.
Sure.
And we go to this explosion at the jail. The flooding had filled up like the basement. There was a gas leak, and the pressure just built, and it finally ruptured, blew open the sally port. Walls had come down, and so we went in to do the search. And I just remember like we get on scene, and it was like it's like the movies, you know, like you see like this just haze, you know, like lights flickering, those kinds of things. And I remember looking over at Chief Stone. I was like, "Should we be in here?" And he's like, "I don't know." And we just kept moving, and
I don't know.
you know, we ended up making a pretty good rescue out of there. We had 2 corrections officers they were in the basement, and we had to. There was a hole in the floor and it had blown open, and one of this corrections officer, female corrections officer, she had to hold the other guy up. He had like hurt his back really, really bad, couldn't move, so she was holding him above water. So we sent a team down just with a ladder, did like a 2-to-1, and hoisted them both up on a rescue litter, got them out of there. So we got those 2 out. You know, on our way in, they were looking for a couple of missing inmates. We ended up finding one who was just pancaked under these walls. I mean, like these walls are, I don't know, 2 foot thick.
Yeah.
You know,
thick concrete.
Yeah, and just giant sections of it had just blown.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys was under that. But that was like legit, like the scariest call I've ever run in my whole life, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I had good leadership on that one. So
yeah, we do routine house fires constantly, right? You know, they say no house fires routine, but like pretty bread and butter is bread and butter. It's not. There's not a lot that's going to shock you about a 1,400 square foot house fire, room and contents, right? But like, do they train for by the way, you got a flood going on. By the way, the basement's going to explode in the prison, and there'll be people inside of it. So you're going to be dealing with, you know, people. It's going to be occupied. There's nothing in the academy for that. Well, I mean, there is, you know, you got building collapse, but like you're not, there's no evolution that you went through that was specific to that.
Yeah, and you know, like
it's crazy.
Initially on initial arrival, we were by ourselves, you know, and so we were making our way through just like kind of like wreckage. And once we found the COs and got them out, we still had to conduct a primary. Like the COs, you know, Escambia County, the deputies there did an amazing job. The corrections officers did an awesome job. Like the scene ran smooth for what it was. They were like, how do we keep these inmates like in? But they did, but there were still a few missing. So we ended up having to try to find some corrections officers to let us in certain parts of the jail. We, you know, were trying different things. We were trying to like break through windows. I don't know if you've ever tried to break through like that
a prison window
or like the Lexan, like.
Oh yeah, almost impossible, right?
Yeah,
a hurricane style window.
We had a mall, and they're like, "Yeah, go ahead, take a swing, Watson." I was like, "Yeah, I got this."
Yeah.
I thought my wrist shattered, and I didn't even make a scratch. I was like, "Okay, we'll wait for a CO to bring us a key."
They've talked about that before. They've, I want to say might have been Eric Wheaton talking about the problem with forcible. It was Eric Wheaton talking about the problem with forcible entry in South Florida and Florida in general with the hurricane. You think you just break it and do a VES. And
yeah.
It's like sometimes the answer is you're absolutely not going to be doing that.
Those Lexan windows, I mean, it's a saw all day.
They're not playing around. I'm having, hopefully, if I can get this equipment to not give me problems, I'm going to have the Stone Brothers on here shortly, and I'll maybe ask from DJ's perspective, what he was thinking, because you were crapping your pants thinking like, you know, DJ, like he's got it. He'll be right. And he might be thinking, I was crapping my pants too, dude. I didn't know what to do.
And you know, that was the only thing keeping me going is like, I'm like, I see these guys ahead of me. I'm like, well, they're going. So, I mean, let's keep going, but
just keep going.
Yeah. I didn't know what to do, but
Oh,
Yeah, that
good. You
was
got a couple grabs out of it. You
that
know,
was a once in a
technical
lifetime call for me.
rescues. You'll probably never see that again. I will say that very quickly from my own flooding experience, we flooded in back in Louisiana in 16. That was pretty nasty. House got 16 some odd inches of water, but it was like a war zone. It was like when you said it's like the movies. I know exactly what you're talking about because I kind of had to live through rescuing. My dad came rescue us, and then we went back on his bass boat to rescue other people, and
Yeah.
it was weird. It legitimately felt like a movie. There was nothing. I had no experience to compare it to. It was its own little pocket of stuff. So, um, all right, we got all our main topics knocked out.
I think so.
All right. So, excuse me, the last two things we're going to cover, as I tried to ask all of the guests, is your mentors. And when I say a mentor, what for me, I think it gets thrown around maybe a little bit too loosely nowadays. Like, oh, I met a guy at a conference; he's a mentor now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, mentors are guys they have I say this all the time, a vested interest in guiding you down the right path. It's that when shit's kind of going sideways in your life and you can call that person, they can give you nice quality advice, good or bad, like, hey, you're screwing up, to get you back on the right track, or hey man, you're fine, you're doing good. And that's the kind of, when I say mentor, that's who I'm really looking for. Yeah. So who you got, and kind of why? I like to give mentors a shout out because that's not an easy position to take. Most people there's a lot of apathy in the fire department where it's too much work so a guy that takes vested interest to help somebody else out, I think I need to hear about him. So
For sure. I have to start with my cousin, Bubba Ennis from Gainesville Fire. If it wasn't for him, I would have never joined this job, it became a calling. It wasn't something I was drawn to initially, but man, I'm so glad that he did. He, I guess, saw something in me and, thought that I could make an impact or thought that I'd be good for it. Like I said, when I didn't know where I was going after I joined the Navy, I just knew I wasn't going to be in the Navy. He said, join the fire service. I was like, okay. And again, helped walk me through the whole process, got me gear, every question I ever had, he was right there to show me the way. And, he's a big part of why I appreciate the fire service so much. I saw what, he put into it and the reputation he garnered for being such a good fireman, he's the epitome of just a badass, man. He's a smoke diver, he's just an ultra competitive guy. He's good at everything, at least I think he is.
a Florida smoke diver.
Yeah.
That's a toughie.
He's a bad dude. He's a bad dude.
Toughie.
And one of the biggest things outside of, I don't know what we're allowed to say on here. If we can say anything we want, but one of the things that he always,
if you go too crazy, I'll edit it out. So
yeah, he used to tell us that when I joined the fire academy, he said, "Hey, it's 80% mental and 30% not being a." And you'd have guys like try to raise their hand. He's like, the math's there.
Yeah,
I'm like, I like that, and it wasn't just like that part of, that I liked about it, but it was also, he taught me to not take the fire service for granted.
Sure.
So I'd be remiss not to mention him for sure, first and foremost. The second guy I'd say is a captain from Escambia County, Joel Richardson. He was one of my first company officers. He's the one that really sparked my passion for RIT. He really is. He's a student of the fire service. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. Could have been anything. Instead, he chose to be a really great fireman and paramedic. He's a captain there now. But he brought me along to the frog team, and showed me why RIT is so important, because it combines so many different aspects of just firemanship and firefighting. You got to be good at search. You got to have the physicality. You got to have a good head on your shoulders. You got to be good at drags and carries. There's so many things that it's not just RIT going to get your brothers. It also applies to getting everybody else too. And I like the fact that, he's a super, fit guy, but he's also like brilliant. So like, it's not just that, people look at firemen like
caveman.
Exactly. He embodies both of those things, and he's always been there to give me just sound advice.
Excellent.
Last but not least, our fire chief, our current fire chief, when I was at Escambia County, he was
Wow,
a part-timer there.
What a kiss ass.
Yeah.
Like that's
He was a part-timer there. Didn't have a power stash then, but he ended up growing one a few years later, way before me, and that's why I grew mine. So I got to give him a shout out for that alone. But
yeah, I didn't mention the mustache, but I think it's very important. You have one of the most impressive mustaches I've ever seen. I can grow a pretty nasty one, but gnarly with the curl up. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is that I like to give props to him is like, like when I got hired at Crestview, he was still a company officer. I watched him make captain, battalion, deputy, fire chief. And throughout the whole process, we're very, very different. People think that we're very alike, but we're very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
But our goal has always been the same. And that has been such an important thing for me, is that having a guy that I can use as a sounding board that doesn't think, he thinks almost nothing like I do,
Mm-hmm.
but we're driven towards the same things. Our goals are the same things, protection of the citizens, making the fire department better, raising the standard, upholding the standard. And so I've been able to kind of round out my personality from him, like by seeing another perspective and another point of view. But he's always the guy that's like, hey, like this is what I think, and doesn't care if the young buck's got a new way he wants to challenge. Hey, let's try it. Like, he's always the guy that encourages you. Anything you want to try, let's try. We'll go out and pull hose all day. He's always been like that. So
is he pretty plugged in? Is he like a conference goer, if you will? He's a guy that's like he's got his ear to, I say maybe he's not going to conference, but he got his ear to the ground when new things come up, or when, hey, somebody brought this thing in.
When he can break away, he's going to conferences. He's going to,
same one,
Pensacola
CFT,
Beach,
MAFC.
He went with us to Andy Fredericks, I mean, just to show you how involved he is, he participated in the Firefighter Beach Challenge on our team. Like, he's still walking the walk. So
yeah. Well, y'all placed fifth. Do you blame him for that?
Well, we had two teams, and he wasn't on the fifth place team, but
I was gonna try to. I was gonna put you on the spot right there.
No.
I think Louisiana won it, but Baton Rouge. I think it was Baton Rouge again. Yeah.
Yeah, they're studs.
I knew that already. I made it sound like I didn't know, but I just wanted to point out that Louisiana is constantly beating y'all at your own thing. But for me, it's like a sports team because for me, it's like a sports team because I'm not participating. It's almost like, my sports team won, even though I had no part in it whatsoever. So I'm just a fan bragging at this point. So good job, Baton Rouge. We're proud of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good job, guys.
All right. So from there, final question to wrap it is, if I know we're both reasonably young in the fire service, right? But if you had to go back and give yourself rookie advice, so the idea is that, hey, you're fixing to walk into your first assignment as a rookie, and you want to give them advice that's going to make their job better, make things go more smoothly, whatever. You got to give them a piece before they go in. What do you think you're giving a young Chris Watson, a rookie Chris Watson, before he walks in?
The best advice I could ever give someone would be that you don't have to go to work, you get to. And I can still say to this day, I wake up with that same mentality. I never wake up going, I got to go to work. There are days where I'm like, we got hose testing today. All right, whatever. I'm not excited about that, but I'm never, ever upset or discouraged about coming to work. I love coming to work and I'm hanging out with the guys. I'm getting to ride on a fire truck. I'm getting to do cool stuff. I'm getting to work out and train hard. I'm getting to do fun stuff with guys I respect that, and also, most importantly, I get to help people. And that's a huge thing for me. It's selfishly, it's very self-gratifying that I get to do all these cool things. I don't even feel like I'm going to work, I'm getting paid to do all of these things that I would be wanting to do anyway. So you don't have to go to work, you get to. And I think that it's so surreal when I see some of these guys start to retire, and I think that it actually starts to hit them, that like they look forward to retirement those last 5-10 years, like, I can't wait to be done with this shit. Well, and then you are. And where do you see them? They're the guys stopping by the fire station. Hey, what's up? Like, what are you guys up to? Like, what are you training on? It's like, you miss it. And I know I'm going to miss it one day. So that's why I try to remember that.
Yeah. My old crew, I love that. My old crew, they know Zach Payton and Deshaun, we would say all the time whenever something ridiculous. I say ridiculous, something that we don't look forward to, like truck swap. Truck broke down, you gotta swap it. There's nobody that likes doing that, but we always go back to, you don't have to do this, you get to do this. And it's to try to reprogram our brain to say, it is essentially saying, like, guys, even when it's bad, even when there's a bad, it's still the greatest job on earth. It's still an unbelievably good job, and nobody has to do it. Nobody held a gun to your head and said, show up to do this. So try to reprogram their brain, especially early on, to say, you don't have to do this. You get to do this. I love that, because I said, once again, we'd say it all the time. Even before I'd say it, I'd kind of ingrained in it to them so much that when something, like a truck swap or something would come up, they would say it before I would say it. We don't have to do this. No, so I love that. You got any final thoughts?
No, I think we've touched on a lot of good stuff. Got a lot off my chest.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I appreciate you coming down. Super. I love part of the, I'm going to have had some of the bigger names. But I said the same thing for the Jimmy Gregory podcast. It was his first podcast that he had ever done. And I like finding guys that are really dialed in, that are way better than me, but that are just slightly under the radar, and having them come in. It's really a joy of this podcast that everybody's got a story, and to be able to hear their story and document it, up to this point is very enjoyable for me. So yeah, I'm gonna have the Stone Brothers on. They've both been on 1,000 podcasts. If you want to hear them, they're out there. But one of the joys is, I'll find you at a conference and I'm like, holy crap, this dude's way better than me. Let's bring him on and talk to him for a little bit and see what he thinks about the job. Because clearly you love the job. There was no doubt in my mind. I could say, once again, just being able to tell the fact that you're at a conference and how you moved around the building. I was like, he's dialed. Let's bring him in and talk to him. Chris, if anybody wants to contact you, let's say, man, I saw Chris Watson, I want to talk to him. How do they get a hold of you?
Shoot me an email, captain2469@gmail.com. That's CAPTN. Or if anybody wants my phone number, they got your information. They can get it from you.
Yeah, reach out to me and then we'll shoot it over. You're on social media too.
Yeah.
DM him on Facebook. He'll answer you back eventually. But yeah, reach out to me. I'll get you his number. So if we don't have anything else, Chris, I appreciate you. I know you live like right next door, but I appreciate you driving out, fighting through all of our audio issues, and let's stay in touch, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me come on the Dragon's Den.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. So that's it for the Dragons, the another episode of the Dragons Den podcast. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank y'all.